The idea of using second citizenship to dramatically reduce or even eliminate your taxes is so appealing to many, and today I'm going to share with you the truth about tax-free second citizenship. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And today we're going to discuss an issue that we have been discussing over the years that I think bears repeating. And that's the idea of how second citizenship can affect your tax plans. Now, as always, you have two different camps here. You have people who are U.S. citizens, so-called U.S. persons, people who are liable for tax in the United States. And until they renounce their citizenship, cancel their green card, move out of the U.S. For most of the year, if not all the year, they are going to continue to be U.S. taxpayers. And so for them, second citizenship acts as a way to extricate themselves from that system, either by replacing their U.S. passport, or if they're a green card holder, giving them a better passport that perhaps removes the desire to have U.S. citizenship by naturalization in the future. For everyone else, second citizenship is merely a way to augment what you already have. And so I think what people often look at is the idea that they're going to go down to Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Vanuatu. Those are the three big tax-free countries that offer citizenship by investment. You can get their passports in a matter of months. You make a donation, or you go through some of the other contribution schemes to the country, and you can be a citizen. Now, what does that get you? It gets you the right to live there. Now, most people don't live there, right? Most people, including many of the people that we helped, have obtained citizenship in, let's say, Antigua. And they will use it as a backup. They'll keep it as their plan B. If they want to go and travel to Russia, it's going to be a lot easier to go to Russia as an Antiguan in good times than it is as an American or a Canadian, for example. They'll use it to establish residences, so that if they ever need to leave the U.S. or the U.S. passport doesn't work, they can use the Antigua passport to have a separate way of presenting themselves, all of course above board. And if you want to protect yourself from future tax increases, many Western countries have started to hint at maybe we should tax people who don't live here. Maybe we should tax our citizens the way the U.S. will. Maybe many's too strong, but certainly a handful have started to talk about that. And so the idea is understanding when you get citizenship in another country that those tax policies don't necessarily apply to you. And this is an area that's confusing to many people, because I've mentioned, for example, spending time in Colombia. I've mentioned having a residence permit in Colombia, and perhaps one day I will be entitled to apply for citizenship by naturalization in Colombia. Colombia has a pretty straightforward series of tests as to whether one is a taxpayer or not. And in Colombia, generally speaking, if you do not have a Colombian business, and if your income is not derived from local sources, they're going to apply a days test to you. How long were you in the country? And so if you're in the country for 3 months a year, and you don't meet some of the other basic criteria that would probably only apply to Colombians with on-the-ground businesses, you are likely not going to be taxed. And this is not tax advice. Obviously, you want to get proper advice for your situation, but that's a generic understanding. And so if you then subsequently become a Colombian citizen, that does not mean that you're going to be a taxpayer. Now, there are certainly some conditions that Colombia applies. They're not as friendly with Panama, so if you're Colombian, you want to live in Panama. That could be difficult, although again, if you've never paid tax in Colombia, it's going to be a little bit different situation than someone who did pay tax and then moved. But by and large, being Colombian is not going to dictate where you pay taxes. Where you move is going to dictate where you pay taxes. And so let me give you another example. Let's say that you decide to go for the creme de la creme of citizenship programs. You decide to participate in Malta's citizenship program, where you're going to put in about $1 million. And in about 18 months, you're going to be Maltese. And by extension, you're going to be a citizen of the European Union with all the rights and privileges to live anywhere you want in any of the member countries, not only the EU, but in some of the countries nearby, such as Switzerland, Norway, etc. Now, Malta has a very favorable tax program for many people. However, let's say that as a newly minted citizen of Malta, you wanted to go and live somewhere in the EU where you could get a total tax exemption. Let's say your income qualifies that you could pay zero tax in Portugal. you can go as a Maltese citizen, you can live in Portugal, and you can pay zero tax potentially under their NHR program for the next 10 years. And so could you have gotten a residence permit and moved to Portugal? Sure, you could have. And essentially you are getting a residence permit by virtue of being an EU citizen. It's just a different set of criteria, right? You get to move in more or less as of right. And so the idea is that Malta, as your citizenship, doesn't dictate where you pay tax. Sure, that's a tax-friendly country, and the idea of having a citizenship in a tax-friendly country may be more appealing to someone who says, you know what, maybe one day the EU falls apart, or maybe one day there's a huge pandemic, and this whole thing of living in other countries doesn't work out. I want to have a citizenship where I can go to that country, not the one next door that's part of the same union, whether it's in the Caribbean or Europe or whatever. I want to be able to go to my country and be treated with low taxes. I don't care where I can visit. I don't care where else I can live. I want to go to my country. Well, in that case, if you're getting Caribbean citizenship, you probably want to look at St. Kitts and Nevis. You want to look at Antigua. Depending on your income, you might want to look at even at Grenada. All right, you would not look at St. Lucia or Dominica because they have less favorable tax policies for most people. They don't have a lot of taxes, but they do have more taxes than the other islands do. And so, in that regard, the tax-free or tax-friendly passport would lead you to the country that has the best income tax policies, or whatever the kind of tax you're trying to avoid today. But I think most people confuse it in the sense of the passport being a tool. Caribbean citizenship for people who are American, who aren't qualified for citizenship in any other way, and who don't want to wait years, this is their path to get a Plan B and or to expatriate from the United States very quickly. And so that passport serves a tool, or serves a purpose. Its purpose is probably not to go and live in that country. Now again, it may be worth it for some people to pay a little bit extra to say, hey, I'm going to go to Antigua instead of St. Lucia, and I'm going to pay a little bit extra for that privilege to give myself citizenship in a tax-free country. Even though as a St. Lucian, I could essentially go and live in Antigua, hey, you know what, that's not secure enough for me. Now, obviously in Europe, it's going to be more difficult because there really aren't, really strict, zero income tax countries in Europe. But this is something that I want you to keep in mind. Second passports are Plan Bs in case of future tax increases where the tax scope is increased, i.e. your country imposes citizenship-based taxation, or the U.S. imposes a wealth tax, and you said, hey, I was willing to pay a little bit of something to stay a U.S. citizen, but now this is just unfair, I want to bail. It also gives you the ability to live in a country, and so, again, if you want to go and live in Antigua for 6 months a year, you can become a tax resident of Antigua. And if you spend enough time there and you meet the right conditions and you don't, get into trouble anywhere else, then most other countries shouldn't tax you, with the exception of, income you earn in those countries or certain dividends, whatever. But by and large, you can be taxed in that country because you have the abilities as a citizen to live there. But simply having the passport doesn't solve a problem for you. And this is a misconception that we've talked about time and time again. Getting a second passport just to immediately reduce your taxes is something that I've talked several people recently out of because they didn't understand that without living there, it didn't really solve any immediate problem for them. So I think always be diversified, always have a backup plan, always have options, but realize that where you live is going to be more important for reducing your taxes. Having a tax-free citizenship is, I think, not a bad idea. It's something that I have personally factored in as one of the reasons for building my passport portfolio. And I think it's not a bad thing to have in the portfolio. If I'm only going to get one citizenship, I would value it less highly than I would if I'm getting the passport portfolio we talk about. Because understanding that you want to get the best passport for travel, for options to live, knowing that as long as it's not a U.S. passport or some other passport that starts taxing its citizens globally, you'll have the flexibility to go where you're treated best. Whether it's a Maltese citizen living in Dubai or an Antiguan citizen living in the Cayman Islands, you can do that. And that's something that you should consider. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.